So it's always good to put your flat on its own layer, your fashion croquis, because then we can't accidentally draw on it or move it. And also, some of the ways that I have you guys select certain elements involves like clicking and dragging a box with the mouse, and if the first layer is unlocked, it can be hard to do that. So we have talked about how to make a flat, and we have potentially talked about how to make pants, and how to join anchor points into one closed shape, all of that good stuff. How do we reflect? If I've made one half of my pants, I'm grabbing my reflection tool, lives under my rotate tool, might look like that, reflect tool. What do I have to click to reflect this over my center path?
Option.
Yeah, you guys are better than the other class. The other class was like, I don't know. It's the fourth week. No, option click the center. And check preview is always good, and then you can hit copy, and we have two. So whatever you draw, it's good to just draw half. You can reorder the layers there. But today I wanted to talk about adding some other details. So I'm going to make this shirt have like a row of buttons that just goes down to like the chest. So I'm going to get rid of this stitch line and draw a few lines. I'm actually going to draw them with the line segment tool because some of these lines I'm going to want them to be dashed like this, and some of them I'm going to want them to be solid. So I have my smart guides on so you can see as I come down and line up with that anchor point across. See that red line happens to the left of my mouse, so I can release there and know that those two are perfectly lined up, and then I can click and drag to connect them. So this guy would probably be solid, so coming over to stroke I can uncheck dash line. It still had some settings on from the last class I taught. And I was reviewing this book, and I forgot to make a handout, but this book I have says that dashed lines, these stitch lines, should actually be half a point thick, and that does look nice. It like really thins them out and makes them look nice and thin. I had some other kids asking in the other class if it was acceptable to make things lower point or if everything had to be the same point thickness across the page. And any seam lines should definitely be at 1 point, but if you want to aesthetically decide that other detail lines need to be smaller, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to do a button. And I'm going to do it in a fairly precise way. So we have the circle tool. Where does it live? Here it is. So the ellipse tool, and if I hold shift, I can make a perfect circle. And right now I'm drawing on 1, and I might choose to lower this down a little bit, but to like half a point. But for right now, I'm going to leave it at 1. So make this nice and small. And let me zoom in here. So with my line segment tool, I'm going to draw a tiny line segment. But I want to make sure, because I'm going to make this X shape, that my line segments are like exactly at 45 degrees from each other. Otherwise it would look weird if a buttonhole X was like not exactly across. So I'm going to start dragging, but if I hold shift, it will snap me to that cardinal direction of 45 degrees. You know, if I hold shift, I could snap at 0 degrees and I could snap at 90 degrees, but I'm snapping at 45. And we're just going to make a tiny line. Now I'm going to take a second to introduce the alignment tools. So let's say this is pretty dramatically out of alignment. We can make sure that this line is exactly centered in this circle up here with the alignment and distribution tools. So I've touched on these before, but I don't think we've ever had a project that really utilized them super a lot. Any of these tools up here that has one line through it, see these have two squares and one line up there. Those are the alignment tools, and if you hover over them, you can see what type of alignment it is. Horizontal align center, vertical align top, and the line in it represents where on the geometry of the shape will it be aligned. The distribution tools, we'll get to them in a minute, but they have two lines through them and two shapes. So alignment tool, and I'm going to choose horizontal align center, but I made a mistake. This aligned it in the center of the artboard. I'm going to hit Command Z, and this tool right here, we want to make sure it's aligned to selection when we use it. I was demonstrating in the last class how you could go wrong, and then I went wrong. So next to these alignment tools, guys, there's a little drop-down menu, and if you want it to align to itself and not to align to the geometry of the artboard, you have to choose Align to Selection, and then we can choose Align Horizontal Center and Align Vertical Center, and then it'll be perfectly aligned. I'm sorry, I've lost Align Vertical Center. Here it is. There. Let's give that a round cap too. There we go. That looks nice. Now I'm going to flip it over itself. I could use the flip tool and option click on the center and that would be fine, but actually if we just go to transform reflect, then it automatically flips around its center point with reflect. So I don't know, just another, you could always option click, but that looks good. It's going to flip, so we can hit copy. And when we have our most perfect X, you're like, Kelsey, you could have just drawn an X, and you could have, but it wouldn't be this exact and perfect. So we have this really, really beautiful button, and I'm actually going to take this opportunity to introduce the symbols panel to you guys. So the symbols panel looks like a club, like from a deck of cards club. And if you can't find it, you probably will have to get it out. Go to Window Symbols. And I can delete the symbols that are in here right now. We don't need those. But if I choose this guy, choose all three of the pieces, and then choose New Symbol, the symbol options panel comes up, and we want to choose a graphic type of symbol. It's not a movie clip, it's a graphic. So there's a few benefits to using symbols, to which I will explain, but I'm going to hit OK. Before I get to the benefits of using symbols, I'm going to copy and paste this a few times, so I'm going to hit Command C, Command V. Is that going to work? Do it for me. Put it in the same spot. There it goes. And I'm actually going to make a point of making these unaligned, so that you can really see what is happening with them. So they're all over the place. They're really unevenly distributed. But if we select all 6 of these, we're going to come up to the Align and Distribute buttons again. So again, I just want to make sure it's aligned to selection, because otherwise it's going to spread these out all over the design board or the artboard. And I'm going to align horizontal center, because I want them to be all lined up. And then I'm going to distribute vertically. So now they're all perfectly even. And I can kind of switch around if I, whatever. Now, what if I've decided that I think they look good, like they're in the right place, but I want them to be all 1 point thick. That would be kind of annoying if I hadn't turned these into symbols. So now if I double click on this symbol, it asks me, you're about to edit the symbol. Any edits to the symbol will be, any edits to the symbol will be applied to all of its instances. And that's actually what we want. That's cool for us. So if I select both of these, and I make it 0.5 point on all of them, then when I hit escape, it's going to make all of these 0.5. See that? See that? Did you see that, guys? So even if I come in here and I make this symbol, and let's say I decided that I want the symbol to be a square, I don't know, something like this. I want my buttons to have points on the bottom. As soon as I hit escape, it applies to all of the buttons. So symbols are really nice that way for making anything that you are not sure about, or like it's just nice, like maybe I'm going to use a button on a bunch of different flats and I like want to have a button in here that I can just drag out whenever I want. Like that's kind of nice too. We're going to talk about more about symbols in 1 second. So Kelsey, what if I want to make one of these buttons a different color or a different shape? How can I do that? Now they're all connected to each other. Well, you can just come up here with one selected. You can come up to the top and choose break link. And now it's just editable shapes again. Probably have to ungroup it a couple times. But eventually you will be able to just choose one of them and I can give it like a blue, just one of them a blue fill. But now it's not connected to the other guys. Okay. I'm going to make a new artboard for a second. Going back to the symbols library, we've now discussed like align and distribute. The symbols library, and in some of the other classes that I've taught where we've taught flats, we encourage everyone to make a library of symbols of flats. So where I have drawn these pants, and they have almost no detail on them, but they are indeed pants. And I might have to draw pants like this again for some other pants. I can put this in my symbol library. I can just drag it in there. We want to make it a graphic always, and you can hit OK. Then we have it in there. So whenever we were working and needed to make a new pair of pants, we could just drag that out. So we often end up including even this lady. We can put her in there. She won't go in there unless she's embedded. Remember, if they have an X through them, they aren't embedded, and they're still images. Then are still linked to a file somewhere on your desktop. Yeah.
So if you make a pair of pants a symbol and then you use it for something else, won't you make any changes? Will affect the changes in the rest of it?
Yeah. So before, that's exactly right. But before we make any changes to it, we're just going to choose break link up here. And now I can edit it like crazy, and it will be fine, and it won't affect this one. Where you're right, if I did that with the pants that is still linked, double-clicked, you have to double-click into it in order to do that. So it's a little bit like you wouldn't do it by accident exactly, but you're right, it would affect all the pants. Oh, now I've affected that one too. It's terrible, terrible. There we go. So you just have to break the link first. But it is nice to end up getting like a symbol library of your basic shapes in there. So let me delete these guys. And I would just bring this shape in there, hit new over here, make it a graphic, and you can hit OK. So this is really nice to have, but we're on our school computers and sometimes we work on our home computers. So we can save these libraries, and we probably, if we did make a symbol library, should take a moment to save it. So you click on this little library button at the bottom. It looks like a stack of books, and you can come up to save symbols. And then it wants us to save it in like the symbols file in like the Adobe file, like somewhere on the computer, but you can just choose your desktop and save it to your desktop or whatever, and then upload it to your drive, and then you would have it. On that note, I also want to touch on brushes today. We aren't really supposed to talk about them yet, but I think they might be helpful to any of you who are doing anything a little bit more complicated. I'm gonna get canceled. Let's say I want to make a double brush, like a double stitch line here. We can, let me break the link to this. We could just like copy and paste this guy, the line here, and move it up, and then we would have a double stitch line. But we can make a brush so that we don't have to do that. So I'm going to drag out a line and put the dash on it so I can kind of draw off of that. Zoom in on it. And I'm going to draw a tiny line, tiny straight line. And then I'm going to go to Edit Copy and Edit Paste in Place. And then I'm going to move it down like 1 or 2 clicks on my keyboard. Now I can delete this one. Grabbing these 2 lines, I need my brush panel, which normally comes out with the symbol panel, so if you open that up. And guys, this is pretty straightforward. You can grab your new brush, this new artwork that I want to make into a pattern brush, and I can click on new brush over here. Or you can drag the artwork in there, either one works. I'm only going to talk about pattern brushes today. We can talk about any of these later on, but pattern brush, you can hit OK. The only thing I'm going to change in here, this is a little symbol of like what it will look like, but it's so small we can't really see it. The only thing I'm going to change in here is that we probably need something like 20% spacing. So this is like giving it a little breathing room on either side of the stitch. And now if we drag out a line and we click this symbol, sorry, it was still dashed, so it was acting weird, but it looks like this, and that looks pretty nice. And that's automatically, no matter what the curve is, that's the curvature tool, it's the wrong tool. Come on. No matter what the curve is, it's going to give you the same feel. So, this is also really good for gathers. So if we wanted to, oh, I see what I've done. I've messed things up significantly. If we wanted to add a gather, like, or put a belt on this garment, first off, I'm just going to add some anchor points and give it a waist, pen tool, or hit plus to get the add anchor point tool. Click, click. And we can bring these guys in, can convert them to handles. Because of the way I have you guys do the back piece as like the same exact size as the front piece, I do have these like extra weird gray lines now. And I could spend time trying to get them to like precisely line up with the front lines, but I'm actually just going to be a little sloppy and just drag them so they're like not visible, right? Does that make sense? Bam. So instead of leaving them like this, I'm just dragging them in there. And it's not like neat and clean behind here, but that's okay. You can't see it. Now, I would probably actually make these like kind of blousy corners. So I'm holding Alt and clicking and dragging on the handle. And then I'm going to drag a rectangle for a belt out. A nice, easy shape. Come on. And I can adjust the anchor points individually. Okay. So I can potentially just grab something like the brush tool, the pencil tool, and come in here and just start putting these moments on it, although I don't have a stroke on. I never know how to get it to start with a stroke. Pencil tool. Jeez. Am I drawing behind? Yes. All right, there we go. So I'm just making these little moments here, these little like pleaty gathers. And it's not necessary that you do like movement lines or anything in all of your garments, but it is nice to show fullness in certain areas. So I'm gonna grab these guys, and these don't look very good. But if I grab them and then come up to the top here, actually these are all 2 point also, which is, I'm gonna make them all 1 point. And then next to stroke, up at the top, I'm choosing this kind of tapered brush, right? Tapered brush, and it makes it look more natural. It's again not necessary that you do this. Our illustrations shouldn't look kind of like sketchy or anything. They should look this crisp, illustratorly style. But it is nice to add some for like fullness lines and stuff to get that taper going. So all I did is up here at the top, I changed it from uniform, which has square edges, to have this taper. So that looks good, and that's fine. But the other option for gathers is to make a quick gather brush. So I can take a few of these things. I could probably copy and paste them, although it really doesn't matter. And then in the brush panel, we can choose new brush. Give it a little bit of spacing. And then I could, instead of going through all that work, I could just copy and paste this bottom line, edit, paste in front, just that bottom line, and then I could apply this stroke to it and try to get it lined up nice. So brushes can really help your workflow. Is anyone planning to do an exposed zipper? So I don't want to go, we will make a zipper brush, but I don't want to spend a ridiculous amount of time on it right now. So I actually want to, I'm going to share it with you guys. So on Moodle, I have put my zipper brush. So you can download this zipper brush library. Now it's in my downloads folder, and it looks like an Illustrator file, but the real proper way to open it up is through the brush panel. So I can come down to this little library symbol again, and if I wanted to, I could save my brushes, just like I taught you guys how to save your symbols. You can just choose Save Brushes, and then save it wherever. But if I wanted to load my symbol library or my brushes library, I can come down to that library menu, choose Other Library, and then navigate to my library, Downloads. And then we have this little library panel. So I have a brush here for the left side, the right side, and the middle of this. God, this thing sometimes. So with one more line going down the center, we would apply the brushes like this, with one on one side, one on the other side, and then the big tooth one for the middle. And you would have to play with them, I guess, to get them to look perfect. Go this and move it over a tiny bit. Yeah. But that looks pretty good. Does that make sense? So you're just, that library in particular, you're just downloading from me. But that's okay. People share stuff in the fashion realm. The last thing I wanted to do was ribs, because like a ribbed stretchy cuff. So on this weird garment that I'm designing, zoom in on this sleeve. I'm going to add a ribbed cuff to the bottom of this. There's a lot of ways you could do this, but I am going to do the way we have discussed, where I'm going to draw a line across it. And then select both of them and choose divide. And it splits it along the line I drew, and now they're two separate shapes. You have to ungroup them afterwards if you want to work with them separately. Or you can always double click on stuff. Double clicking on stuff that's grouped enters isolation mode, which means you can work on groups more normally without ungrouping them, which is nice. Anyway, add anchor point tool. I'm going to make this a little bit blousier. I mean, like, just have a little bit more fullness. You guys know. Convert to a corner up here. Convert to a smooth line from a corner. All right, now the ribs. I'm going to make a rib pattern brush super quick. I'm just going to drag out a couple lines. You want them to be exactly the same size and exactly in line with each other, so it's best to go to Edit Copy, Edit Paste in front, and then use your arrow keys to move it over. That looks good. And select them both, and back in my brush panel, I can choose new brush, pattern brush, and then I can give it like maybe 50% spacing, and we can hit OK. We're going to talk more about brushes later, so this isn't the end of brushes for you guys. So I can draw a line across this and put the rib on it. Why so big? Oh, okay, my spacing is off. Oh, 0.5% is no good. I meant to do 50%. So after, you can double click on brushes to change brushes you've already made, but I have a brush that had that applied to it, so it's just asking me if I want that brush to change, which I do. So that looks better. Get it the way that you like it. And you're like, but Kelsey, you've made a mistake. We can't see this, or like it's going over the end of the shape. And there are a couple ways around this, but my favorite way is the clipping mask. So just a review of clipping masks. If I grab an image really quick from Google Images and paste it somewhere. Anyone know what a clipping mask does? It's how you crop in Illustrator. So if I, any shape that I make, I can crop this image, or any like number of images or number of shapes to the size of this image. So no matter how many more shapes would be under this, it's always going to crop to the top shape, the shape that's on the top of the stack that you have selected. So if I select both of these, my star is on the top of the stack, and then I can go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make, Object, Clipping Mask, Make, and now we have a graphic in the shape of a star. Same thing. If I, for whatever reason, wanted to clip this whole shape, this whole garment to a star shape, I could do that. Just select everything, make sure the star is on top, Object, Clipping Mask, Make. Seems like something else was actually on top of the pile. That's what will happen when things will disappear like that. Anyway. Much more straightforward down here. We're just going to grab this under shape, which we made sure it was a nice closed shape by using divide. It's really important to be working in closed shapes. Arrange, bring to front, and then select it and these, this like brush stroke, and then Object, Clipping Mask, Make. And then the outline of the stroke is gone, but you can just double click into it and then click on the outside path and give it a stroke again. You hit escape if you've ever accidentally entered isolation mode, right, where I've double clicked on a grouped object and then everything else is gray and you can't click on anything else and you're trapped. It's just escape. Another way to do that really quick, I'm just going to hit Control Z a couple times. So now we're back here. This shape, anything where I've made a shape out of multiple shapes, even if I've used brushes, I can often expand things into their original shapes. So this guy, right? I can go to Object, Expand Appearance. I have this brush selected and I maybe want to edit some of these. Like I can change the brush stroke on this and get it pretty close, but like, oh, I can't get this last one. I have to get rid of that last one or whatever, or maybe these last 6. If I have it selected and I go to Object, Expand Appearance, now each of them is their own individual little line, and I just have to ungroup it. And I can choose them and delete them separately from the rest of the rib. So that's Object Expand. So those are some various other ways to make shapes, and now we are going to do the shape builder tool. So we have discussed the Pathfinder tool a lot. If we have a rectangle and it's filled, and if we have a star and it's filled with a different color, the Pathfinder tool will allow us, when we have both of these selected, to unite our shapes into one shape, right? To divide our shapes, now we have 3 separate shapes. This one could be made a different color, right? Or it allows us to subtract the shape from the front or the back or whatever these other ones do. All of that is good, but it can be a little confusing for a lot of people, and apparently the Shaper tool is easier, but I had never used it before, so I do have a video here on how to use
Hey everybody, this is so
So we're going to watch this, and it's going to go over this tool. It's right here, the Shaper tool. It looks like 2 circles with the arrow with dotted line through it. All right, so this is So Heidi again.
Hey everybody, this is So Heidi, and this tutorial is going to show you how to create a belt buckle
using the Shape Builder tool. The Shape Builder tool is introduced in Illustrator CS5, so you need to be on CS5 or newer to use this tool. And it's a great way to unite or divide shapes as an alternative to the Pathfinder, which a lot of people find confusing. So here's an example of the belt buckle we're going to build, and I want to show you here that these half moon shapes that you see in the center, half circle shapes, are not actually just white shapes sitting on top. If we put something underneath, it's actually cut out of the shape. So it's drawn in reality how an actual belt buckle would be drawn. So we'll come down here, and we've got a couple different shapes that we're going to use to create our belt buckle. So we have the base of the buckle, and then we have the circle, which we're going to cut out, and then we have the middle portion, which is what the prong would attach to. So I'm going to take these three shapes, and I'm going to align them using my line tool. And so the first thing that I want to do is I want to cut this shape out of this shape, right? So I've got my two shapes selected, my outer belt buckle and the circle that I want to cut out. And I could use the Pathfinder, but instead we're going to use the Shape Builder tool. So I grab the Shape Builder tool, it's about halfway down the left-hand side of your toolbar, Shift-M. And with that selected, as I hover over these, what I first see is a little plus sign next to the tool. Now, plus sign means we would be merging shapes together, which is not exactly what I want to cut out. So I just have to hold the Option or Alt key, and what that does is it changes it to a minus, and then anywhere I click will then be subtracted, minus out of the shape. So I want to cut out this circle, so I click on that, and it's cut the circle out. Now you'll see, if I draw a shape behind there, we've got that cut out, so that's great. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to merge this into the actual belt buckle, so it's not just a separate shape, since this would be a molded buckle and it would be all one continuous piece. So I'm going to select these two, grab my Shape Builder tool, and when I want to merge shapes into each other, I can simply click anywhere, and I'm just going to have to drag over all portions. So I'm going to click here and I drag through, and you can see it kind of slowly starts to give you a preview of what's going to be merged. So that's going to be merged on that side. Now if we come over here, I still have a portion on this side that needs to be merged. So I'm just going to click and drag through, and now that's all merged. So now I've got this really complex shape that I was able to build using other shapes, cutting them apart, merging them together, and it looks great. I'll then move my prong on top, and I've got my belt buckle. So a great way to cut shapes out of other shapes to ultimately create what are called compound paths. Anytime you have a shape with a cutout inside of it, it's called a compound path. Great for belt buckles, buttons, zipper pulls, all sorts of trims within the apparel design world. Thanks for watching. This is So Heidi. I'll see you next time.
So that is the Shape Builder tool, right? Sorry, I get confused sometimes. Yeah, the Shape Builder tool. But I also wanted to intro the Shaper tool, not the Shape Builder tool. So the Shaper tool allows you to do like really rough sketches of shapes, and it turns them into actual shapes. So if I draw like a really pathetic circle, it automatically turns it into a circle. If I draw a triangle, it makes a triangle. If I draw a square, it makes a square. I think it does other stuff if you hold like Shift and Alt. Like I could maybe add. I'm no expert with this tool either, but we can use it and then use the Shaper tool to make our belt buckle. Or use the Shape Builder tool. So we align center, select them both, and then choose, let me also align horizontal center. Go over to the Shape Builder tool, and if I click on this, actually nothing happens because the plus function is clicking and dragging based, so I have to Alt click and then it does subtract. Alt click that, and I can draw a quick rectangle for this guy. I could also take a second to align center and align horizontal center. And then you have to click and drag with the shaper tool to add things. So I can click and drag over these 3 points and then click and drag over these points, and I have that shape she was building. Okay. This is really good for like zipper pulls too. Like if I wanted to, maybe we can come back to my zipper over here. If I wanted to draw a zipper pull for this guy, click first and then zoom. I could draw the shape of the outline. Maybe it's a circular zipper pull, I guess. Give that a fill. But then the like pull that goes in it, we can just grab the shaper tool really quick without trying to futz with what the heck is the Pathfinder tool called. Option click right here with them both selected first. Shape builder tool, option click. And now we can see the zipper behind it, which is kind of nice. What else? Maybe this goes at the bottom of zippers, actually. I'm like, what does a zipper look like? So anything with compound lines, you can move this interior line around, but you have to select it with anchor points. Compound lines means like anything where you've got an interior shape and an exterior shape. I think so, Heidi just said that. Then we'll give it a top zipper pull too. There we go. It's nice as you start making these things, zipper pulls and such, to start dumping them all into a symbol library. It's even nicer if you have a separate symbol library for these moments. What are they called? These things, like, anyway, all these details that go on the flats. It would be nice to have a separate symbol library for them. On my computer, I have a separate symbol library, and this was an assignment from your class in Mount Ida, where we have a symbol library for children's wear, all of the basic flat blocks for children's wear, and the children's wear croquis. And then we have one, same thing, all the pant blocks and everything for menswear and women's wear, and I don't know, maybe we did a juniors. But it's really handy because now I'm not logged in on here, but I can just like on my computer grab it. Trying to think. The other thing that I want to touch on is the Creative Cloud library, which we don't have access to because, as far as I can tell, Creative Cloud, the program, is not installed on these computers. But on your home computer, you might be able to use this Creative Cloud library where it's handy because if you log into it on multiple computers, you will always have whatever is in this library. But I'm afraid I can't teach it properly. Do you guys have any questions on how to design specific flat details? Is there anything that I've glossed over? She does have a note on here about creating textures, which I skipped in the first class this morning. But if you had a garment that had like a plaid on it or a pinstripe I just did. And this isn't exactly texture, but we could make a really simple pattern for it. And I know we just learned about brushes, but don't forget patterns exist. Like patterns might be the solution in some cases, and brushes might be the solution in other cases, if that makes sense. So I'm just gonna draw a few lines here and go to edits, object, pattern, make. Object, pattern, make, no edits. Oh God. Let's try it again. I think my square got crooked. We just want a little square, a little rectangle. You could always draw patterns. We're gonna talk more about like potentially scanning in fabrics and making like patterns out of fabrics later on. I can get this guy, object pattern, make sure my background color has no stroke on the outline. And then I just have a nice stripe. I lied. And if I've made nice closed shapes, which really you should be, we can apply the color to it. This guy shouldn't have a fill on it, and that's why that's there. I am not going to require that your garments be colored for this project because you're still learning, but next project it will be required, and for this project I would encourage it. It's good practice to like be making closed shapes and be checking that you can apply color to those closed shapes, right? Because that's kind of the whole point, is making closed shapes. So you might be able to get away with it for this semester just having things like flat lines on top of it, but it's better to have nice closed shapes that you could apply patterns to. Anything else? We did brushes, we did symbols, we learned how to save those libraries, we learned how to get my zipper library. We talked about various design details. Okay. I think that's it for today. We can take a break until 3:30 if you guys don't have any questions. All right. Thank you. And I remembered to stop it.
No, not yet.
You're good.